It's the French Grand Prix, round 11 of the Formula One World Championship and round 11 of Alonso against Schumacher, a battle for the world title that is very much alive. Your commentators here in the heat of Magny Cours, Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Magny Cours. As you've been hearing, in the heart of central France, undergoing something of a heat wave at the moment. This is the warmest day of the 3 days of track action we've had so far. The air temperature now climbing all the time, currently at 34 degrees. No shortage of Alonso fans and Renault fans in the audience. It certainly seems as though the theme of the summer broadly is Italy versus France World Cup final, and here it's Ferrari versus Renault, and plenty of fans for both camps here. What should be an enthralling battle between Michael Schumacher and Fernando Alonso for victory here this afternoon. Schumacher, though, is bidding to become the first man to win the same Grand Prix on 8 occasions. France has been a very happy hunting ground for the 7-time champion, but it's home soil, obviously, for Renault and Michelin. And they believe that although the Ferrari Bridgestone package was stronger in qualifying yesterday, they perhaps will have a slight edge when it comes to race conditions. But it's not to be underestimated that Ferrari have come along here with a new aerodynamic package, a substantially revised car. And it's very hard for us to tell what's making the difference. Is it the Bridgestone tyres that put them on the front row of the grid? Is it how much is it that? How much is it the revised aero package, as these two teams push each other to the limit in their quest to become world champions this year? Certainly, though, Martin, it's going to be very hard work for all the drivers. This is a racetrack which the balance of the car and the tyres and the handling changes perhaps more than anywhere else we visit, doesn't it? And certainly all of the teams and engineers I've been speaking to have been saying it's going to be, in many ways, the most adaptable driver who wins this afternoon, not necessarily the one who's outright fastest on every lap as the car changes underneath him.
Yes, it's the driver who can be kind to his tyres and think the race all the way through. But it's all about corners, this racetrack. There's no straight worth its name, and anything that is vaguely in a straight line is totally dictated by the previous corner leading onto it. I remember testing here for Ligier loads, and you'd go out at 9 o'clock in the morning wiping the sleepies out of your eyes still, doing 1:13s on the old layout. And by lunchtime, you couldn't break the 1:16s just because the track warmed up and maybe you weren't on such fresh tyres. And the time just falls away. In many respects, it is very frustrating, but it does open up opportunities to get some surprise results. But it's a difficult racetrack and some unusual racing lines too, but you can protect those tyres.
One unfamiliar name you'll have seen going through there on the grid crawler, De La Rosa, who is replacing Juan Pablo Montoya, who's turned his back on Formula One racing and is going to race in NASCAR next year. He's left the team with immediate effect. Just looking at the second half of the grid there, it was a difficult qualifying for Honda. 13th Barrichello, 17th Button. Car just not fast enough. Button also having a few problems with some traffic. Quite a lot of the drivers reflecting, certainly the Italian ones anyway, reflecting their country's victory in the World Cup last weekend. Trulli and Fisichella both have revised helmet motifs. And there he is, just going through his ritual of warming up the fingers. Ralf Schumacher, best grid slot of the year so far for him. 5th place for Toyota, just behind teammate Jarno Trulli, who's 4th. Just underlining how good the Bridgestones were yesterday. As Flavio Briatore there just shake hands with his lead driver Fernando Alonso on the grid.
Alonso has to beat Massa away from the line. He's got a great chance, I think, of following Michael Schumacher through that fast left-hander, the first turn, because Massa will be approaching it from quite a tight angle on the left-hand side of the track. It's quite a disadvantage to start on the left here. It's dirty, and it increases the angle of turn 1 quite dramatically, and we all know just how fast that Renault can leg it off the start line. And then I think it's going to be down to how much are the Bridgestones going to degrade, and can Alonso stay in there with Michael Schumacher? I don't think the paddock has a clue, frankly. None of us really can second guess how this is all going to turn out.
Well, it's been like that at quite a few races this season, hasn't it? And wonderfully exciting it's been too. You can do all the predictions you want and all the science and the mathematics that tell you what should happen on a Sunday afternoon, but when you actually go racing, it's often a very different story. And just picking up on the theme of what you were saying about Alonso needing to get in front of Massa, one of the other reasons for that is the Bridgestone tyres have been going off after about 4 laps for a period of about 4 or 5 laps. So if Michael Schumacher's to weather that difficult phase on the Bridgestones, he definitely needs Massa protecting him from Alonso. If Alonso's able to get in front, he will attack him hard during that phase. It could be decisive.
Yes, Alonso's opted for brand new tyres, which I think gives them about 5 metres in the start phase. And it's very much the second phase where the Renault's fast anyway. It seems to just get up and running and doesn't need any traction control or so much traction control. So Alonso has got a great chance to slingshot Massa. And at the back of the field there, the Super Aguri Honda sounds like he can't find first gear.
Which will make the start interesting if he does make it back. Well, all the front three have got 2 new sets of tyres available. They're allowed 7 sets over the weekend. They've already used up most of them, but they've got 2 new sets available to them for this afternoon. So at some point in the race, presuming that they stop twice, maybe 3 times, they're going to have to use new set twice and a used set twice. Alonso clearly opting for the extra bite off the start line, and I imagine that the Ferraris are opting to have the extra performance off the back of a pit stop. A new set of tyres around here is worth about 1.5 seconds a lap, and it seems that we talk a lot about this kind of thing, these tyres and all this sort of stuff, but it's the details that make all the difference. These cars are so closely matched that it is these tiny, tiny details of exactly when to use the new tyres, exactly how to operate things that make all the difference between winning and losing in Formula One.
Yes, of course, just the same as with your road car, or particularly with a motorbike, the contact patch on the road at any one point is actually quite small, particularly with the downforce, the load that's going through them as the cars carry several hundred kilos of downforce at top speed, and that's why the tyres are critical. It's not just the compound, the type of rubber, it's the construction, the carcass of the tyre pressure, and trying to keep that under control. As you watch Alonso now with his familiar style of hard on the brakes, move the steering wheel around, trying to distribute some brake heat into the rims and therefore into the tyres as well, and then planting the throttle. And he's got a very good procedure for getting himself good tyre temperature and pressure all around the car, and that's quite hard to do.
Big crowd here this afternoon. Have been sitting in the grandstands getting very hot all morning, waiting for the action to start, and in a moment it will do. There's Raikkonen. We haven't talked much about McLaren. We believe that Raikkonen's carrying, as he often does, more fuel than the cars in front of him, and it'll be very interesting to see whether that makes any difference. You have to say McLaren have not been on the same sort of pace as Renault and Ferrari so far this weekend, but you never can count out Kimi Raikkonen. Mark Webber there, coming through to 10th place on the grid. His teammate Nico Rosberg starting towards the back, having had to change an engine before qualifying. So 70 laps of this 2.75 mile circuit to decide the winner of the 2006 French Grand Prix. And the lights go out. The race will be on. Now, how's Massa going to do it coming across to protect Michael Schumacher? He's not letting Alonso get a look in, but Alonso's gone, as Martin predicted he would, down the right-hand side, but he's had to get off the throttle. Massa has pulled it off. He has retained the 2nd place, and that is so important to Michael Schumacher, who streams away in front. The rest of the field look like they've got safely through the Estoril corner. Side by side, 2 cars down the back straight. It's one of the Toyotas, I think it's Ralf Schumacher and Kimi Raikkonen attacking round the outside. Alonso has another look at Massa, but no way through there.
Alonso very nearly tripped over the Toyota. He came from a wide angle into the hairpin and very nearly exposed himself to being collected by the Toyota of Jarno Trulli. And it's not worked out at all well for Fernando Alonso. Now he's locked up a bit going into the 180 corner. He had to get out of it in turn 1. He could not afford to have an accident. Actually on the way into turn 2 in the end before he lifted the throttle.
One of the Hondas there coming through very aggressively. This is Rosberg, presumably attacking Jenson Button on the right-hand side. Yes, it is. That is the battle for 16th place, and Rosberg has lost that place to Button. So Button up to 16th from 17th on the grid. Michael Schumacher is leading. 2nd is Felipe Massa. 3rd is Fernando Alonso. 4th is Trulli. 5th is Raikkonen. 6th, Ralf Schumacher. 7th, Fisichella. 8th, De La Rosa. 8th now Webber. 9th, De La Rosa. Webber's got past De La Rosa.
Webber's had a flying start up to P8. Coulthard's dropped back to 11th behind Heidfeld as well. Button up to 16th. He made 1 place. Now we're going to see Alonso goes around the outside of turn 1, but then there's a little left kink before they hit what I call turn 2. It's turn 3 officially, but now is where Alonso has a sensible pill and realises he's got to get out of that. And down the back straight, if we see a replay of that at any point, Alonso's going to wish he hadn't committed so early when he replays this in the week. he's going to wish he hadn't committed so early to the left-hand side of the track. I think he might have been able to sneak up the inside and take Massa. Anyway, it's now established itself. Michael Schumacher from Massa, Alonso, truly Ralf Schumacher, Kimi Räikkönen 6th, Fisichella 7th, Webber 8th, De La Rosa 9th, Heidfeld 10th.
Yeah, and Webber and De La Rosa are having a terrific scrap. The order's been changing almost sector by sector on the computer up here, so they're having a wonderful dice over the final points position. De La Rosa standing in, of course, for Montoya. Remains to be seen whether he'll be in that seat for the rest of the season. There's a number of other candidates, including Britain's own Gary Paffett, who's a McLaren test driver, and Lewis Hamilton, of course, who's a McLaren protege, currently leading the GP2 championship. So an awful lot to come from that situation. It really will depend on how well De La Rosa does in this Grand Prix. Little lock up there for Alonso, who's undoubtedly going to start becoming a little impatient behind Massa. He's now just dropped back from him a little to keep his temperatures down in the engine and bide his time and think about exactly what he's going to do. Michael Schumacher, though, is putting the hammer down at the front. He's now a second, 1.7 seconds clear of his teammate Felipe Massa. Alonso third. And looking at that grid restart, the race restart again, it seemed as though Klian had a bad start. Everybody had to go around him. Christian Klian, starting 12th on the grid, is down now in 15th place. So he was the big loser off the start line. You can see there Mark Webber made up a couple of spots. De La Rosa lost one. That's all about being race rusty, isn't it, Martin?
Could well be. And this is Takuma Sato dropping out of the Grand Prix. We're down to 21 runners already then. We're on lap 3. And Sato, I don't know, was it him on the grid that was struggling to find gears? Didn't quite catch which one of those super gurus it was. I think it was Sato. But Michael Schumacher then, Massa and Alonso, those three are over a second clear of the rest of the field on the previous lap.
Well, we saw throughout free practice that the Bridgestone-tired teams, Ferrari obviously in particular, have to be a little bit careful off the start with their tyres. The more you hammer them at the start, the more damage it's going to do. Here's a little look at Alonso on the first lap, getting very, very close to being passed by Jarno Trulli as he tried to find a way around Massa. And just looking at the way Michael Schumacher's conducted himself over the first 3 laps of this Grand Prix, he has actually been taking it quite easy on the tyres. Massa's been containing Alonso, and this is the tactics, certainly. It's definitely advantage Ferrari off the start. This has worked out exactly the way Ross Brawn would have wanted it to.
Yeah. Alonso was smart, actually. I think he realised he was exposed down into that hairpin. He put himself right on the outside. Truly did well not to just steam in and run into the back of him. And Alonso giving them a little bit of space while he got on the throttle on the outside. But a lot of risk then in that first lap for Alonso, and absolutely no reward for it, other than he's still got a complete car with all 4 wheels pointing in the same direction.
It was interesting hearing him in the interview with Louise before the programme started, just saying how much more measured he is now as a Grand Prix driver. He was tense at every race last year, even though he had a pretty comfortable points margin over Kimi Räikkönen throughout the season. He felt that tension because he hadn't done it before, won a world title. Now there's so much less pressure on him because he's been a world champion. He's again out front, and even though it's Michael Schumacher who's hunting him down, he's much more composed about the way he goes racing. He certainly needs to be this weekend. He loosened his grip a little bit last week in Indianapolis. A pretty poor performance by Alonso's extremely high standards to come in 5th place. But ironically, the damage was minimal. If you look at the 2 North American races, Canada and Indianapolis, Schumacher and Alonso both had 1 win and both had a 5th place as well. So it was actually situation neutral coming out of those 2 races.
Yeah, Räikkönen under a bit of pressure from the second Renault of Fisichella. But yes, in terms of points, I agree with you. Alonso didn't have a bad North American tour, but in terms of his head, he was absolutely nowhere at the American Grand Prix. And I think he's been quite ragged here, certainly in the early stages of this French Grand Prix weekend. But at the moment, he's not sitting too badly in P3, behind the 2 Ferraris.
So, Schumacher leading on lap 6. He's just set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far, and that is a sign that he feels that the tyres have gone through that early degradation phase, and he's now picking up the pace. That lap is almost a second faster than they were doing the lap before, and a very hot pace indeed for Michael Schumacher as he now seeks to make the break from Massa and build the lead that he hopes will bring him the Grand Prix victory later on.
That's an astonishing lap time. It's some 3 seconds faster than the bulk of the field, other than those that are chasing him hardest. Incredible, just miles ahead of anybody else. And anybody from sort of 10th downwards, 11th downwards, are running 3 seconds a lap slower than that. So Michael, as you say, clearly feeling that he's bedded those tyres in, and he just put a bit of a margin between him and Massa.
Well, there is, talking about the midfield, there's a little queue forming behind Rubens Barrichello, which includes Scott Speed, Jacques Villeneuve, Christian Klein and Jenson Button. So Button caught up in that. He's got no further than he did on the opening lap when he passed Nico Rosberg. And Button is up into 16th place. David Coulthard, 9th on the grid, but he's dropped down 2 places in the early exchanges in the first 6 laps of this race. So he's lapping in the low 1 minute 20s, around about the same sort of pace as the 4 or 5 cars in front of him. Then pretty much the top 6 or 7 are all a good second a lap, or 3/4 of a second a lap faster than that. You're looking at Mark Webber, Pedro de la Rosa behind him. These two have been fighting since the start. And it's a bit of a return for form, really, for Williams, who had an appalling race in Indianapolis. They've come here with some new parts, and they seem to be working a bit better for them. Alonso now much closer to Massa. He's aware that Schumacher's getting away from him, and aware that possibly he's going to have to start doing something about it.
Yeah, the only thing that put a smile back on the face of Renault now is if Ferrari pits somewhat earlier, because Massa, unquestionably, whether intentionally or not, is keeping Alonso back.
On board with the world champion through these high-speed chicanes. And he is close, isn't he? Building up to something here, I think. Lap 8 of the French Grand Prix in Magny, 63 to go. Michael Schumacher's leading here by now 3.9 seconds as a result of a lap he just put in, which was a 1:17.9. Considerably faster than anything anybody had done before, and a very clear indication that he feels now that the Bridgestone tyre has gone through that difficult phase, that early phase, and is now ready to deliver the kind of performance he needs to start building a cushion over his main rival here, Fernando Alonso. He's lying currently 3rd, as you can see, behind Schumacher's teammate Felipe Massa, who is doing a perfect teammate job for Michael Schumacher. And now Alonso is 4.5 seconds behind Schumacher, and he's going to have to start doing something about this. He's going to have to turn the engine up and have a go at Felipe Massa if he's going to stop Michael Schumacher from running away from him. Jarno Trulli in the Toyota is 3 seconds behind in 4th place. Ralf Schumacher's 5th, 6th is Raikkonen, 7th Fisichella, and 8th Webber, who's having a great scrap with Pedro de la Rosa in the 2nd McLaren. You're looking at the train, which is has at its front Rubens Barrichello in the Honda. Jacques Villeneuve's in there. So is Christian Klein, who had a poor start from 12th on the grid. Jenson Button, who was 17th on the grid and is now up to 16th. They're all involved in that train, and Rubens, they're going a little bit wide in the corner.
And who is that sneaking through? It is Scott Speed for Toro Rosso, because Rubens is in the 1 minute 22s. Michael Schumacher in the lead is in the 1 minute 17s. A new fastest lap again by Michael Schumacher, 1:17.7, as Massa also picks up his pace and releases Alonso a little bit as well for 1st, 2nd and 3rd. But Barrichello has now just crept it, so around 1 minute 21, but struggling for pace, and that's why he's got the traffic jam behind him.
On board with Nico Rosberg.
Qualified 9th, but put to the back of the grid for a 10-place drop. And, well, look at the queue you can see on fascinating how they get all of that information to assimilate it like that. But anybody who had a bad start is being heavily punished. De La Rosa stuck behind Webber for 8th and 9th and is running quite a bit slower than Kimi Raikkonen. And also then everybody else caught up behind Barrichello. Speed has escaped.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with Scott Speed recently. He had a terrific run in North America, and he was the fastest of what you might want to call the 3rd division drivers, really. You've got the front race between Ferrari and Renault. You've got a middle race involving, obviously, McLaren, Toyota, those sort of teams. At the back, you've got Toro Rosso Midland Super Aguri, and for sure speed is punching well and truly above his weight. He's now got in front of the Honda of Barrichello and up into 12th place. Let's hear from Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, down at McLaren, James, and Kimi Räikkönen right in the middle of a great fight. Ralf Schumacher ahead of him, Fisichella behind, but we think that Räikkönen's on a 2-stop, whereas Ralf Schumacher is on a 3-stop. So Kimi's doing a good job to keep up with Ralf, but really needs to pass him if he's got a chance of a podium.
Yeah, what's interesting is also Räikkönen's only 11 seconds off the lead in P6, so that little pack are not so far behind. You can see them in the background now. They're not so far behind Alonso, who has been dropped fractionally now by Felipe Massa. The race beginning to have a second phase to it.
Oh, it's going to have a lot of phases, this race. That's for sure. Webber, we were talking about being in front of De La Rosa. He's 7/10 of a second in front, and it's interesting to compare De La Rosa's pace with that of Räikkönen, who we're now riding on board with, who's in 6th place. Räikkönen's lapping in the mid-118s, just like most of the cars in front of him. De La Rosa, though, is in the mid-120s behind Mark Webber. So the Williams obviously struggling a little bit for pace at this part of the race, and that's hurting De La Rosa's Grand Prix this afternoon. He really does need to get past Webber. He's already over 20 seconds behind the race leader and 8-9 seconds behind his teammate. So be interesting to see. De La Rosa's not afraid of overtaking people, is he, Martin? As we saw at Bahrain last year, where he stood in for the injured then Juan Pablo Montoya. He pulled off some amazing passing moves that day.
He did. He came from some distance back sometimes and never quite made it into the corner, but we know he's brave enough to have a go. The problem here is to follow somebody through that long Estoril curve onto the back straight. You're already going to be enough of a distance behind them, unfortunately, before you can do anything down the following straight. Now the Ferraris have just started to slip back into the 18s now, and Alonso's beginning to match them. He's 5.6 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. So we'll keep an eye on that, on those lap times, to see if there's any change, any degradation going on. We're on lap 11.
Well, you'll have been hearing from everybody about the fact that this is a difficult racetrack for the tyres, that they degrade very badly and very quickly. And why is that, you will be asking yourself? Well, there's a lot of different factors at play here. One of them is the asphalt is very black. It soaks up a lot of heat, and on a sunny day like this, the track temperature reaches up to 53 degrees. That's obviously going to put a lot of work through the tyres. Also, you've got this very, very long right-hander here the cars are in now. And for over 2 seconds, there's a very big load on the left-hand side, particularly the left front tyre, and that puts an awful lot of pressure through them. On top of that, because it's a very low grip surface, the wheels spin quite a lot coming out of the slow corners, so after a while the rear tyres start to lose their performance. It's a really difficult place to get the car to work. So at the moment, Schumacher pushing hard in the lead, Massa doing a great job behind him. So here's De La Rosa attacking Mark Webber, on board from the perspective of Webber. This is the battle for 8th place, and De La Rosa has to get out of the throttle there for the fast Nürburgring chicane. They go through that one at 140 miles an hour, and that's certainly not a place you want to even think about overtaking. But there's plenty of fight in De La Rosa here this afternoon. He has to impress to retain this drive. 7 more Grand Prix to go in this season after this one, and he would love to think he's going to drive in all of them. Rolling very slowly past me into the pits, Thiago Monteiro, there he is, was in 21st place, and sounds like the engine's died on that one.
He just missed the apex towards the end of the lap, showing on the computer here, so Monteiro carrying some problems. De La Rosa then very close last time around to Webber. He's with the attacking moves he made, he's ended up slipping back a little bit, but Webber doing a good defensive job, it has to be said. This is hurting De La Rosa's afternoon badly.
No chance of a pass this time then for De La Rosa, and they're falling away all the time from the pace of the leaders, well over 1.5 seconds a lap slower than the front runners. So not at all what De La Rosa wanted, and of course that slow start then really cost him. He was 8th on the grid, Webber 10th, and yet in the opening exchanges he ended up behind Webber, and that's compromising his afternoon massively. Schumacher leading then, Massa now 5.5 seconds behind him, Alonso now almost 7 seconds behind him, Jarno Trulli is fourth, fifth still. Whoa, that's what happened to Thiago Monteiro. That's why he missed the apex, Martin.
He certainly did. He nearly took the apex with him. Incredible. I was just trying to work out which chicane that was at, but that was it would knock all the kill switches as well. Was that the final turn? It knocks all the kill switches and generally damages the electronics too, but wouldn't be surprised it didn't damage his back.
That was spectacular, wasn't it? Here's your race leader, though, pushing hard in his bid to become the first man to win the same race 8 times. He's got such hunger at the moment, Michael Schumacher. Lap 14 of the French Grand Prix at a hot and sticky Magny Cours. The track temperature is 53 degrees. The air temperature is 34. And pushing very, very hard out on the racetrack are Michael Schumacher, Felipe Massa and Fernando Alonso. The top 3 here this afternoon. Schumacher sets a new fastest lap at a 1:17.5 as we look at the battle between Villeneuve and Rubens Barrichello. That's the scrap over 13th place. Certainly the front 3 are some way ahead of the rest, but the crucial thing is that Massa here in the second Ferrari has done a wonderful job for his teammate Michael Schumacher in the early phases, let him get away from Alonso, who is now 7.7 seconds behind. And this Grand Prix has had its opening phase. It's now moving into a different phase. We're getting close to the first round of pit stops here that could change things a little bit. This is where the tacticians will change the fuel loads for the next run. We'll see whether they're 3 stopping or 2 stopping here this afternoon. One man who'll be cursing his bad luck off the start is Pedro de la Rosa, replacing Juan Montoya this weekend at McLaren. He had a poor start, fell behind Mark Webber, and now is being held up by him, and he's half a minute behind the leaders. We've lost 1 car. Well, we've lost 2 cars, actually. Takuma Sato, we've just recently lost Thiago Monteiro in a spectacular moment, Martin. Yes,
he got it all wrong coming into the fast chicane. I think it's the Nürburgring chicane. And it says on the computer he missed the apex. Well, he virtually took it with him. And that will damage the electronic boxes in the car and almost certainly damage his back too. A nasty incident because the cars are scraping along the ground at those kind of speeds. Any little curb will launch them into the air.
Well, it says on the computer he missed the apex of turn 17, which is the final chicane, but he managed to make it into the pit lane, so I think that's got the computer's got it wrong. It was, as you say, one of the faster chicanes out on the racetrack that Monteiro missed. We are riding on board with Mark Webber, looking back at Pedro de la Rosa.
Tell you what's unfolding here is Alonso can't hang on to the Ferraris at the moment, and he's under pressure, as he was 2 weeks ago in America. He's under pressure for points this afternoon from the Toyotas. He's only about 3 seconds up the road from Trulli, and Alonso's got a challenge on his hand. And once again, De La Rosa trying to make it around the outside of Mark Webber, and Webber gets back on the throttle early enough to keep him behind. Villeneuve did pass Barrichello in that move that we saw. And obviously one of those was a replay we're just watching there. De La Rosa very frustrated, tucked up behind Mark Webber. Probably on different strategies, which will give him even more than a header. Oh, Ferrari getting ready for a stop.
Yeah, well, we were expecting the first cars to come in around about lap 14 or 15. And, well, this is lap 17 now. Michael Schumacher is on, so a little bit longer than we expected. Felipe Massa in second place, the first man to come in. That releases Alonso. Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, and he's playing his joker early. He's just about to put on new Bridgestone tyres. So concerned of Ferrari that he has to stay ahead. Oh, they're slow getting the hose off. That won't help in getting ahead of Alonso. It should be okay, and he will be helped by these new tyres on now.
Also very clever by Ross Brawn, because he's put him out into a clear track. There's a great big gap that he has slipped back into between Fisichella and Mark Webber. And so Massa able to get the maximum benefit from those new Bridgestones out onto a clear track.
Alonso's really got to go for it now, and he's on the ragged edge. This is a replay, but we saw him coming into the Adelaide hairpin, absolutely locked up at the back, desperately trying to get the downshifts out of the way before the first or second gear hairpin, and Alonso needs to put in some fast sector times, and he's not getting it done at the moment. And still De La Rosa is trying to get around Webber and just can't do anything about him down at that hairpin, and there's no way on the way into that Nürburgring chicane, and in fact he just disadvantages himself a little bit there. He needs to just stay a little bit tidier down that back straight and try and nail Webber up the inside of the 180 corner, because Webber's struggling in there.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? The Ferraris seem to have pace to burn. Into the pits comes Alonso, who was definitely struggling towards the end of that stint on the tyres. He was lapping slower than the Toyotas behind him. He is under pressure from them. One of the McLarens comes into the pits as well. It's Raikkonen from 5th place, so he didn't have more fuel than the cars in front of him as we had thought. It was the same amount as Alonso and less than Michael Schumacher, who's still leading this race now. Felipe Massa, for those of you interested, has just rejoined in 7th place after his early stop. Alonso, I believe, will also slide into that large gap, which is between Fisichella, who's now 6th, and Mark Webber, who is 8th. Massa is in that gap. He's about 6 seconds behind Fisichella, with a nice clear track in front of him to really use the pace of these new tyres.
It looked like De La Rosa was lining himself up one more time down the back straight. So Massa then, where is he? Still he can't make it happen. So frustrating. Webber parking his car in exactly all the right places to deny. And Raikkonen has rejoined and is still ahead of De La Rosa. That shows you how much. And as Michael Schumacher pits from the lead, just shows you how much De La Rosa's been held back there. So a comfortable lead. This should be, if it goes smoothly, it should be straight back into the lead for Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, and 6.7, a very quick stop, indicating that he is going to be stopping 2 more times here this afternoon. That's a 3-stop strategy for Michael Schumacher. Into the pits comes Giancarlo Fisichella from what was 4th place. Fastest man on the track so far, the fastest lap, Felipe Massa, 1:17.141. Just showing you, it's not about how the fuel burns off here in Magny Cours, it's about the performance of the new tyre. That is a stunning lap from Massa, a full 0.6 quicker than anything Michael Schumacher could manage in the opening phase of this Grand Prix. And that is telling Alonso, you are really, really going to struggle this afternoon, mate, to get anywhere near a win.
Yeah, and Massa's outlap was a ½ second faster than Alonso's too. So he'll be quite a long way down the road now. I don't think it'll be bothering Michael Schumacher. They had fallen some 7-8 seconds behind. But now then it's the Toyotas leading. Toyota 1 and 2. And I tell you, if they're 2 stopping, they're looking in good shape this afternoon.
Yes, they've risen almost without trace this season, haven't they? It's been a strange season for Toyota, a very, very poor start. Only a podium in Australia for Ralf Schumacher to shout about in the early part of the season. Then, of course, their technical director, Mike Gascoigne, was fired by the team and replaced by Pascal Vasselon, formerly in charge of Michelin's operations. And since then, they've been quietly getting on with things, not making too much of a fuss. And in the last month or so, that team has started to come good. It's definitely coincided, though, Martin, with a return to form of Bridgestone, you have to say. In Indianapolis 2 weeks ago, Bridgestone was definitely the tyre to be on. And for sure, it seems so far in qualifying and in the early part of this Grand Prix that Bridgestone has the upper hand as well.
Yeah, they're only... Truly's only 5 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher, who, of course, has stopped. So depends if he is on a 2 or 3 stopper, whether that's going to pay off for him. But car looks good. He's hooking up with all the right parts of the racetrack. And Jarno Trulli then leading the race from his teammate Ralf Schumacher by 2.5 seconds. Michael Schumacher further 2.5 seconds down the road. They're 11 seconds ahead of Massa. And after Massa's outlap and stunning first lap, he's now 5 seconds clear of Alonso. That's the difference it made. Barrichello out of the race by the looks of it.
Oh dear, Rubens Barrichello. It's been a poor weekend for Honda. Their new technical director, Shuhei Nakamoto, missed the first 2 Grand Prix after his appointment, but he is here this weekend overseeing operations, and a lot of stories of other members of that team under a lot of pressure at the moment. Into the pits comes the erstwhile race leader, Jarno Trulli.
Right, so they are 3 stopping then, unless they put a bundle of fuel in. That's a 3-stopper, so that's not quite as exciting as we perhaps thought.
No, but Jarno Trulli becomes the 9th different driver this season to lead a lap of a Grand Prix. So that's pretty good for him, and hopefully he'll be leading a few more before the end of the season as Toyota come good. The second specification car, really. They brought out virtually a new car 2 or 3 races ago. That's been a big part of the reason for the upsurge. Who's going slowly here? Oh no, it's, beg your pardon, it's just the mechanics analysing the tyres. I think it was a slow stop. Here we are, riding on board, as we have quite a bit in this Grand Prix, with the McLaren of Pedro de la Rosa,
who has now got ahead of Mark Webber after they both stopped out of vision. De La Rosa ahead of Mark Webber and chasing Villeneuve, who has not yet stopped.
Yep, De La Rosa had a poor start from 8th on the grid, fell behind Mark Webber. That's cost him a huge amount of time. Now he's carving his way through the field. As Martin said, he has passed Webber through the pit stops. Now he's got to pass Villeneuve on the racetrack. There's Ralf Schumacher, who's leading this Grand Prix at the moment, going further than his teammate Trulli.
I'm trying to think when Toyota have led a Grand Prix up until now before. I think it must have done during pit stop phases, but they've been in front now 3 or 4 laps.
So Ralf Schumacher leads, of course, a winner here in the past with Williams back in 2003. This is a racetrack he really loves. Let's look at the relative fastest laps of the race so far, the fastest they've been able to do. Look at Alonso, 7th fastest race lap so far. Quite significant. Well, we saw Thiago Monteiro airborne earlier on. He's now back on the ground and talking to Louise Goodman.
Thiago, that was a very spectacular little bunny hop.
I haven't seen it, but it felt bad. Yeah, I mean, I popped my elbow pretty bad, so I guess it was a hard one. Unfortunately, you know, we had an alarm on the pressure of the hydraulic system. It came earlier than we thought, so I lost the differential, and as soon as I broke, the rear wheels locked and it put me into a spin. It was a pretty high-speed corner, so it could have been dangerous, but it doesn't warn you. You know, it happens anytime. You always want to finish the race anyway, so we tried everything. It was a tough weekend. It's a shame we finished like this.
Thanks, Thiago.
We were just watching as Thiago was explaining his story. Ralf Schumacher pits from the lead. Button getting ahead of Mark Webber in that pit stop with Rosberg, sorry, with a fresh set of tyres. Oops, the Toyota's up in the air. The left rear is not on yet. Ralf Schumacher having a disastrous pit stop. Is that going on? Yes, it is going on. Now he can go.
17.2 seconds, so he's lost at least 9 seconds there as a result of that problem. The right rear wheel was spinning. It must have been horrendous for the bloke on the left rear who was trying to put the nut back on again to see the wheel was actually spinning in front of him. And of course these things spin so quickly, could easily take your fingers off. So Michael Schumacher's back in the lead ahead of Massa. Alonso 3rd, Trulli 4th, Raikkonen 5th, 6th Fisichella. They're showing Ralf Schumacher having rejoined in 7th place as a result of that slow pit stop, in front of Nick Heidfeld in a BMW, who, because he started outside the top 10, could do whatever he wanted to on fuel strategy, and obviously has decided to carry more fuel into the opening phase of this Grand Prix. That's why he is up in 8th. Coulthard 9th, 10th Scott Speed, 11th Villeneuve, 12th De La Rosa, who's tucked up really close up behind Villeneuve, and 13th Webber. Jenson Button, after his pit stop, has rejoined behind the Midland of Christian Albers and the Toro Rosso of Tonio Liuzzi, who started from the back. So Button is really amongst the back markers today.
Yeah, he must have had traffic. His outlaps 2 or 3 seconds slower than the leaders. But so the 2 stoppers then this afternoon look like Heidfeld 8th, Coulthard 9th, Speed 10th, who's catching both Heidfeld and Coulthard, and Villeneuve in 11th. They look like the key contenders to steal the tail end of the points. They've gone at it from a different direction. They know they're not going to win the race, so they've fueled the car to pick up some World Championship points.
So Felipe Massa stopped 2 laps before Michael Schumacher in that opening stint. He was just 1,000th of a second slower than him in qualifying, which is a very impressive effort. But if you correct for fuel, it means he was carrying 2 laps more fuel than Schumacher, which is about a 1/10 and a half. So a very creditable qualifying lap for Felipe Massa, who in my view, Martin, gets stronger and stronger as the season goes on.
Yeah, he's driving well, both in qualifying and in the race. I mean, that's a net pole position for him then, isn't it, effectively, if you compensate for the fuel level. And what was it? No, it's 2 or 3 tenths. Yeah, it's very close anyway. So Massa getting really up to speed in that Ferrari, looking more and more comfortable as every weekend passes.
And it's important for him because there's a lot of jostling going on at the moment for who will drive with Ferrari next season. Michael Schumacher appears behind the scenes to be using his elbows quite a lot. Kimi Raikkonen thought he was perhaps on his way there for next year, but the picture is becoming more blurred as Schumacher asserts his authority and says, well, I plan on staying for another year. I don't particularly fancy having Raikkonen alongside me. I'd much rather keep Felipe Massa alongside me. The picture is becoming more blurred about exactly where Kimi Raikkonen will race next year. He could well end up driving Fernando Alonso's Renault. That'd be a turn up for the books, wouldn't it? This is lap 25 of 70. It's an old Ferrari 1-2 at the front. Alonso now 11 seconds behind Michael Schumacher and lapping at the same sort of pace at this point. Seventh gear then, down to third gear for the hairpin for Pedro de la Rosa, 195 miles an hour. He would actually have ended up in first gear if we'd stayed with the graphic. 35 miles an hour only that corner. There's a look at these extraordinary aerodynamic devices on the BMW, which have certainly sparked a lot of talk in the paddock. And it looks as though the BMW Sauber team are ready for one of their drivers. Neither of them have stopped so far, so it could be Villeneuve or it could be Heidfeld. I bet De La Rosa is wishing it'll be Villeneuve.
Tell you also, Raikkonen up front in the other McLaren is catching Jarno Trulli at a vast rate of knots. So Raikkonen looking more comfortable in this second phase of the Grand Prix for him, having stopped and got some fresh tyres, and suddenly putting the Toyota Trulli under pressure. Ralf Schumacher is now back in seventh after that long stop and just behind Fisichella.
Well, it was Heidfeld who made the first stop, to De La Rosa's enormous frustration, no doubt. He's still stuck behind Jacques Villeneuve, and now 48 seconds behind the race leader and 30 seconds behind teammate Raikkonen. So poor old De La Rosa is having a frustrating afternoon down in 12th place. It's not doing his job prospects much good either. Every time he gets in a car at the moment, it's a job application basically for De La Rosa. Just shows you it pays to get a good start, doesn't it, in Formula One? Christian Klien went backwards at the start line as well, and he's struggling down in 14th place. Tonio Liuzzi obviously had a very good getaway and is up into 15th. Scott Speed was the other man who got away well at the start, and he's got himself into 10th place. David Coulthard finally has managed to battle his way through. Now look at this. This is Raikkonen and Trulli. Raikkonen going around the outside.
Good driving from Trulli. Just held his line, didn't snatch a break, went in nice and deep.
Lap 27 of the French Grand Prix from Magny. The battle here between Kimi Raikkonen, who is catching Jarno Trulli very quickly in the last few laps, and well, this is how he got past him, Martin.
Yes, it's down into the favourite Adelaide hairpin. Raikkonen's down the outside. Trulli keeps his head calm, doesn't lock a wheel, but suddenly Raikkonen just finds so much more drive off the corner and acceleration down this kind of straight towards the Nürburgring chicane. And Trulli just eases off and lets him through. In the end, a surprising and somewhat easy pass, having done all the right things in the early part there for Jarno Trulli. But Raikkonen is definitely much faster with a new set of tyres, a fresh set of boots in the second phase of the race for him.
Michael Schumacher is leading the Grand Prix by 6 seconds from Felipe Massa. He's lapping about 0.4 of a second a lap faster than Fernando Alonso, whose technical director, Pat Simmons, engineering director, I should say. Bob Bell is the technical director at Renault. Anyway, he was saying that he reckoned that Renault would have the pace of Ferrari in race conditions. It hasn't turned out that way here this afternoon, with Alonso unable to jump Massa at the start as the BMW of Jacques Villeneuve makes a stop. And in fact, Alonso has been struggling with the racing against the Toyotas, really. He is now 11.8 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. And although he was hoping to win this Grand Prix here this afternoon, he's now more worried about how he's going to beat Felipe Massa, I think, because he doesn't want to give too many points away to Schumacher. It's just 19 now, the margin between Alonso and Schumacher, with a maximum 80 remaining in the season. And if we come away from here with Schumacher having taken 4 points out of Alonso, it gets very much more interesting, doesn't it, as we head towards Hockenheim?
Yeah. Alonso under pressure again then. And as is Fisichella in the other Renault, he's having a poor afternoon. He's back in 6th, some 28 seconds off the lead, lapping around 3/4 of a second slower than his teammate. So Giancarlo clearly not at all happy with the balance or something of the car. And Ralf Schumacher, having had that very long pit stop, is now chasing him hard. Ted has some news on Fisichella.
On Fisichella, it's the rear of the car, Martin, the rear tyres. He's having a terrible time at the end of the first stint as well, and it's just about to start happening again, which is a shame because he's fueled at least 5 laps longer than Kimi Raikkonen, and if he was anywhere in the vicinity of Raikkonen, then he might be able to get him in the second slots, but at this pace, it's just not going to happen.
And he's 9 seconds behind Raikkonen. I tell you what, the man that Renault really want to worry about is Kimi Raikkonen, because he is closing down on Fernando Alonso. He's taken over 3/10 out of him on that last lap. He's just set his personal best first sector, and Raikkonen is hunting down Fernando Alonso in 3rd place here. Just looking overhead then at Michael Schumacher. That's the top 8. David Coulthard hasn't made his first pit stop of the afternoon yet. So that was what he was up to yesterday in qualifying, in the pole position shootout. He didn't really set a competitive lap, and the reason why is he's carrying an enormous amount of fuel. 30 laps and counting so far. When you consider that Massa came in on lap 16, he's carried twice as much fuel as Felipe Massa virtually.
Yes, Coulthard could be in a great, as Coulthard pits actually, just to say that, he's going to be in a good fight this afternoon with Scott Speed in the Toro Rosso, Nick Heidfeld in the BMW, chasing those final points. And they're looking good on it at the moment. Michael Schumacher's lead now, 6.3 seconds. There's Coulthard, he'll stop longer because he's on a 2-stop and needs to take more fuel. That's the penalty you pay, and then the car will be quite heavy when he rejoins the racetrack. You have to stay left of the white line, so he's sweeping very, very late into the first corner. And something was coming up there, but we didn't see what, unfortunately.
Well, I think he slotted in between Nick Heidfeld, who's 11th, and Christian Klien, who was 12th. So I believe Coulthard has rejoined in 12th place behind the BMW of Nick Heidfeld, but crucially in front of teammate Christian Klien. So if that's the case, he's a pit stop ahead of his teammate. Riding on board with 2nd place man Felipe Massa. We cut back to Alonso in 3rd, who's now 5.5 seconds behind Massa. Although for the first time in a while, that last lap of Alonso's was quicker with Massa's. But more importantly, Raikkonen's lap was quicker than Alonso's, and he is definitely catching him slowly.
Raikkonen now the fastest man on the track. Slow-mo there of Alonso bouncing across those curbs. Such a lot of energy going through the transmission directly through to the driver's back. Most drivers end up finishing their career with all sorts of gremlins, particularly in their lower back. Very unnatural position to be laying in the car almost with your spine curved, and those sort of curbs really do take their toll.
That graphic there just telling you what the speed trap is. The fastest speed through there, 305.7 kilometers an hour, 190 miles an hour. The 2 Renaults at the top then, interestingly, with the Williams 3rd. No sign of Michael Schumacher's Ferrari at the top. Well, we saw Rubens Barrichello make an early exit from this Grand Prix in what has been a torrid weekend for Honda. He's talking now with Louise Goodman.
Rubens, the slow walk back home.
Yeah, no, it was a weekend from hell, really. It was not going anywhere. I had a lot of feel, and the car was starting to pick up pace, but I was struggling on the brakes a lot, and there was nothing I could do, and I was just waiting for people to come in and starting to go a little bit faster. But as you can see, the pace is a bit of a struggle. I mean, since I really got used to the car on the 4th race, this is the worst pace we had for the whole year. So we need to I don't think we need to do much. We just keep our feet on the ground and work.
Thanks, Rubens.
Rubens only his 2nd retirement of the season so far.
Yeah, this is a miserable racetrack if your car's not working, and we saw it etched all over Rubens' face. I mean, he looked 5 years older than when he started the race. He's just fighting the car all the way around.
Teammate Jenson Button down in 16th place, a lap down on the leaders, and we're not even at half distance yet. Klein and Liuzzi both pitting, 12th and 13th. Klein for the main Red Bull Racing team, Liuzzi for the sister outfit, and that tells you what a great job Liuzzi's been doing in this Grand Prix. He started dead last, and he's racing against a man who started 12th on the grid. Looked to me like Klein got out first, he did. Liuzzi shortly after him.
De La Rosa going very well now. Suddenly got himself into the 17s, which is kind of almost fastest lap of the race kind of pace. Although the damage has been done, he's 50 seconds behind the leader has. And Ted is down, there's Raikkonen pits. Yeah,
it was a very short second stint. I'm not sure how well this is going to work out for them, but it's a good stop. A very long one, actually. The fuel hose is off. The guy on the rear was just so slow. The fuel hose was off. The rear jackman just made a mistake there, I'm afraid, cost him a few seconds.
That's a shame, because on the face of it, with a stop time like that, you'd say that, what's this, a replay of Raikkonen struggling with grip there.
I wonder if he had a puncture. That was a replay, obviously, as he rejoins the racetrack around the outside of Estoril corner. I wonder if Raikkonen actually had a puncture. His in-lap was, and it's gone off the screen, now his in-lap was a 1:18.7, so that's a good in-lap, actually, and very strange.
It's a very good in-lap. A very quick one indeed. Yeah, that is odd. It certainly seems a bit early for Raikkonen to be coming in. He stopped for the same sort of amount of time as Massa, Alonso and Michael Schumacher, and pitted at the same point in the race. So he's come in a little bit earlier than we would have anticipated. But there you go. I'm sure the others will be coming in the next lap or two. Michael Schumacher leading then by 8.7 from Felipe Massa. Alonso now 14 seconds behind Schumacher. And he is looking down the barrel of losing 4 points here this afternoon to Schumacher, who's loving his Grand Prix racing at the moment. This resurgence of the Ferrari team really has got Michael up on the balls of his feet, and he's thoroughly enjoying himself, as is his teammate Felipe Massa. And if this is all about Ferrari and Bridgestone getting it right, then what does the second half of this championship hold for us? It looks like it's going to be a tooth and nail battle right down to the final Grand Prix in Brazil in October.
Renault is supposed to have a new package coming on there, an altogether new package for the next Grand Prix in Hockenheim. So it looks like it'll be pretty timely, because without doubt Ferrari and Bridgestone have now solidly got the upper hand.
Yes, well, they're hoping it'll be worth about 3 or 4 tenths of a second a lap to them, the new package, and it can't come soon enough, as you say, Martin. Aerodynamics and engine improvements for Renault, so I'm sure Alonso will want to get his hands on that as quickly as possible. Well, if you love Grand Prix racing as much as Martin and myself and the rest of the team, then don't forget to make your voice heard as Massa comes into the pit lane for his second stop. As Massa exits the pits and feeds back in alongside one of the 2 Toyotas from the looks of things. That will be just in front of Jarno Trulli. So he rejoins in 3rd place, I believe. That was important for him to get out in front of Trulli.
Yeah, he's having a good afternoon. He's working out nicely. Alonso then coming up between some squabbling Red Bull and Toro Rosso. Presumably that's Klein and Liuzzi tucked up behind Jensen Button as well. A lot of work to do here, and Liuzzi jumps out of the way. Is that Alonso waving his hand there? Blue flags are waving, that's for sure, as he feeds through the lap traffic.
Well, he needs to do it, because on that last lap he lost 7 tenths of a second to Michael Schumacher, and he's losing even more here as well as he works his way through this traffic that Schumacher has already dealt with.
Klein lets him through eventually, and they compromise him, so he'd have been better just to blend it out down that back straight and to give himself. Look at the way Alonso's slinging that thing around. Just about had the left rear tyre off the rim through there. He's giving it so much. I don't think he's got anything left. Low tyre pressures he's running, and the front tyres waving around too. So Alonso on the ragged edge, and it's not fast enough.
But it doesn't half look good. That's what you want to see, a Formula One car sliding like that. Absolutely wonderful in this era of aerodynamics and super grippy tyres and almost robotic suspensions. It's very, very unusual to see a Formula One car slide like that, but that's what we want to see. And I'm sure many people will be saying so too in their questionnaires. Here we go then, De La Rosa into the pits from 8th place. Nice stop by McLaren.
Set of scrub tyres. They've obviously done one qualifying run, I'd imagine. De La Rosa back out onto the racetrack. That's going to put him straight back behind all the two stoppers.
Yeah, that's not exactly what he had in mind. He's had a torrid afternoon, really, having made a poor start, De La Rosa, from 8th on the grid. He fell behind the Williams of Mark Webber in the early stages and was a second and a half a lap slower than his teammate Raikkonen because he had to run at the pace of the Williams. And this is an important weekend for De La Rosa to impress. And you can see very clearly there Alonso waving his fist in the air. Who is he behind? It must be Jenson Button, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. Jenson's not ready to ease out of the way. Has he had any blue flags yet? And now he does. Gets him through on the clean side of the track, which is gentlemanly in the end. And Alonso's on his way, but a lot of damage done through this traffic.
Yeah, now 16.6 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher. Well, that's wonderful, that fast chicane. There's two of them at this racetrack. They go through them at 140 miles an hour. I don't know if you've ever driven 140 miles an hour on a... Well, you're not allowed to do it on the roads, obviously, but then perhaps on an airstrip or a piece of private land. It's incredibly fast. Imagine changing direction twice at 140 miles an hour. They call it the piff-paff here in France. And a change of direction, absolutely spectacular. Riding on board with De La Rosa, Nick Heidfeld in front of us in the Sauber BMW.
Actually, he's fed in between Heidfeld and Coulthard, De La Rosa, so at least he's cleared one of the two stoppers, and he's catching Heidfeld at a vast rate of knots down the back straight. And surely Heidfeld's going to turn in on us. No, he's not. He's let him go.
Well, that was a very easy one for De La Rosa, wasn't it? Certainly providing plenty of entertainment for us here this afternoon. What's your evaluation of him as a driver?
Pedro, I think he's very fast. The team love him. He's tested well for them and been a very loyal disciple of the McLaren team. They'll be impressed with that move. Pretty unimpressed with a former protege there, Nick Heidfeld, because I don't know if he thought he was being lapped by a McLaren or by Raikkonen or something, but it's almost as if he thought he was being blue flagged and had to let him through.
Bit early for that for the BMW. He's comfortably in front of Michael Schumacher, who's lapped everybody now up to and including Scott Speed. So David Coulthard, who is about 8 seconds in front of Schumacher on the road, is going to be his next victim.
Magny Cours finally getting a few bumps. You can hear them down into the hairpin as they're downshifting. The back axle locking up. Michael Schumacher pits from the lead at the end of lap 38. But finally a bit of a ripple effect down there and struggling with the transmission. Another perfect stop for Ferrari.
Well, he's going to rejoin behind Alonso, who's going to lead this Grand Prix for the first time this season. But of course, Alonso has to make another stop. And that is the net effect of the first half of this Grand Prix, is that Michael Schumacher is effectively one whole pit stop ahead of Fernando Alonso, which is about 17 or 18 seconds. Wonderful the way it's worked out for him in this opening phase.
Well, Michael not on brand new tyres, but already he's attacking Alonso down into the hairpin. Now, remember, Alonso is towards the end of this stint on his tyres, but quite a bit lighter on fuel, and Michael's ready to have another look.
Well, this is for position. Obviously, it's for the lead of the Grand Prix, but Schumacher knows that Alonso has to stop again. He's not really going to challenge him for the race win, but this is about boys being boys. And we saw a little bit of that yesterday in the final part of qualifying when they went out to burn off some fuel. They were racing each other on the track, overtaking each other, and absolutely no need to do that, but they were just really enjoying it. They have enormous respect for each other, these two. Schumacher's seen Alonso coming up through the ranks. He's watched him, and he's now his main rival. Ted Kravitz, what do you got?
Yeah, down at Williams, Mark Webber's left rear tyre has delaminated. He came in, and you could see the yellow bits of canvas and metal wire that you see the tyre is made up of. He's spun, and the tyre, oh, well, that's why. Yeah, he's come in and relatively intact, though. Put a new set of boots on, and he's out again.
That's a bit alarming for the Bridgestone runners, but the spin was clearly all about the delamination of the tyre. That was not Mark Webber's fault, but a significant time loss there then for Mark Webber.
Well, Webber is on the Bridgestone tyre with Williams, same tyres that Ferrari use and Toyota, and I imagine that the Ferrari and Toyota engineers will be a little bit concerned to see that. You could see a big chunk of the left rear tyre flying off as Webber had that spin at the very, very fast chicane. And a bit of a heart-in-the-mouth moment then for Mark Webber. We're riding on board with the race leader, Fernando Alonso. But if you're just joining us, don't think it's one of those Renault dominates weekends. It certainly isn't. Michael Schumacher is the man who's dominated this race so far. He is right behind Alonso with a pit stop in his pocket.
If I was Michael, I wouldn't go anywhere near Alonso, because for Alonso today, his best result would be for the pair of them to get wiped out into a hairpin somewhere, because once again, he's going to lose significant points in this World Championship battle.
Oh, but that's the old way of doing things, isn't it? This is the new Formula One. This is post-Jerez 97. People don't do things like that anymore, I don't think, but who knows, when the pressure's on, you never know what a man might do. Trulli retires. Jarno Trulli, who was running in 4th place and at one point putting a lot of pressure on Alonso, out of this Grand Prix for Toyota. We'll find out why, hopefully, for you.
Bad news then, Trulli going well this afternoon, and that is Mark Webber in the pits again for Williams. Or was that a replay? That was a replay. Another tyre gone. Did we not see this last year with Williams? A piece of bodywork touching on the tyre in Istanbul last year. Ted, what can you say?
Yeah, they've turned the car off. They've turned the engine off because they've got no idea what is going on. It's another incident. The same tyre, Martin, the left rear. They're having a look at it. In Istanbul last year, you remember it was a bit of the rear wing that was actually fouling the sidewall of the tyre. But Sam Michael overseeing things at Williams, they've got no idea what this is all about. But it's dangerous. So it looks like Webber's out of this one until they can find out what's going on.
No points for Williams in the last 5 Grand Prix, and with Nico Rosberg, the sole representative, down in 16th place. Looks like that stretch is going to go to 6 Grand Prix without a point for Williams, and they are currently 8th in the Constructors' Championship, battling with Red Bull Racing. They're a point behind them, and well, that's the lowest position Williams have had since 1988. These are difficult times for the Grove team. There they are, Williams mechanics working on the back of Webber's car.
That suggests it could be a rear wing end fence touching on the tyre and damaging the tyre. Will they have to bring Nico Rosberg in to have a look? He's just moved up to 15th place, but unless there's been specific damage on the back of Webber's car there, then they'll have to bring Rosberg in to take a look. As I expected, Michael doesn't want to get anywhere near that Renault. I have to say, if Michael offers himself up with a Dan Deere move up the inside of a hairpin, Alonso's got to turn in on him. You would?
Of course. What else? What else would you do?
We won't go anywhere near that, that snarling Renault. And we've got a Toro Rosso rejoining the racetrack and getting passed by the leaders.
Yeah, I believe that's Scott Speed, who's been having a pretty good run at the moment, in the top 10 once again. And it seems that he's just gone off the racetrack. So he goes a lap down, and the next victim will be David Coulthard, who's about 5 seconds up the road now from the race leaders. Into the pits then, for his second stop of the afternoon, comes Fernando Alonso. The pace has not been there for Renault. Looks like a used set of tyres, a slightly scrubbed set of tyres going onto Alonso's car. So he will not get the same injection of pace you get from a new tyre. But he can do with all the help he can get. It's him against Massa here for second place this afternoon. Michael Schumacher leads the Grand Prix, 28 laps to go. Mark Webber is pushed away to his 7th retirement of the 2006 season, and a lot to reflect on for him and the team. That is the top 8: Schumacher, Massa, Alonso, Fisichella yet to make his second stop. Ralf Schumacher, same story. Raikkonen is 6th. He has stopped twice. 7th is De La Rosa, so is he. Heidfeld is 8th for BMW at the moment. Neither of the 2 BMWs in the top 10 in qualifying, but we've got one of them in the points in the Grand Prix. The other one, Jacques Villeneuve, down in 11th place, trying to close in on Scott Speed at the moment. Now, what about Raikkonen? Where is he? He's lapping faster than the cars in front of him. He's catching Ralf Schumacher at around about a second a lap at the moment. But keep an eye on Kimi Räikkönen here this afternoon. Particularly Giancarlo Fisichella will be keeping an eye on him. I think he's going to get beaten by Räikkönen this afternoon.
So what's interesting is De La Rosa is pretty solidly, now he's got clear air, catching Räikkönen every lap. He's 3, 4 tenths, sometimes 5 tenths quicker than him. Massa's the man beginning to struggle with pace. We don't know if he's in traffic, but Felipe Massa has fallen back into the 1 minute 19s. Alonso's outlap was a horrendous 1 minute 41. Very slow outlap, when a good outlap's been 37 to 38. So Alonso's lost 4 seconds somehow on the outlap.
Yes, now 24 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher, which is an enormous margin considering they were going to be racing each other for the victory here this afternoon. So it's not turned out the way that Renault expected it to. At the moment, Bridgestone and Ferrari have the upper hand.
Webber rejoins the racetrack, then Coulthard laps him, but Mark Webber will, somewhat cautiously I'd imagine, be turning into these fast chicanes.
Of the French Grand Prix from Magny Cours, Michael Schumacher said going into this weekend he believes Ferrari has the best car in Formula 1 at the moment. It's just a very critical car to set up, and it's absolutely vital that the tyres work properly. Well, they're certainly working this weekend. It's a Ferrari 1-2. Alonso struggling in third place. Fisichella is going to come under pressure from Räikkönen very soon. We've already lost the Toyota of Jarno Trulli, who was running fourth and hassling Alonso. Let's find out what happened to him when he retired. He's with Louise Goodman.
Jarno, you have the look of an extremely frustrated man about you.
It's an unbelievable season for me, you know. There is no one race when something goes right, you know. And here was everything fine at the beginning, good start, the car was really good. You know, the package was quick enough to keep up with the other, which were on 3 stops. I was on 2 stops, so I knew I would have probably had the chance to fight for third. Unfortunately, after the pit stop, I have had a problem first with the engine drop-off, and then at the end, I had a problem with the brakes, so it's really a shame.
Bad luck.
Yeah, very frustrated and unusually animated, Jarno Trulli there. As Fisichella pits, he was 29 seconds adrift of Michael Schumacher. That was before he pitted, and he's now pitted the same number of times. I'm wondering if they've moved Alonso onto a 2-stopper. He was in the pits for 9.6 seconds. So we'll keep an eye on that, but I wonder if they've changed strategy to try to keep Alonso in play. And Rosberg pits from P15. A difficult day for the Williams team. Mark Webber has rejoined the race. He's 4 laps down. Whatever was fouling that left rear tyre, they've obviously moved it away. Second fastest man on the track at the moment is Pedro de la Rosa, second only to Michael Schumacher, and consistently catching teammate Räikkönen with each and every lap now that he's got some clear air.
Now, I'll tell you what he's racing for, Martin. He is racing for Ralf Schumacher, who's currently in 4th place, has got 1 more stop to make, and De La Rosa is going to make it before too long. De La Rosa wants to be in front of him when he rejoins. It's going to be very interesting. De La Rosa, we believe, has to stop again, but he's going to try and get himself in front of Ralf Schumacher at that point. But no question that De La Rosa, second fastest man on the racetrack at the moment. Michael Schumacher lapping in the low 1 minute 17s. Massa and Alonso in the low 1 minute 18. So Schumacher in a league of his own at the moment as his brother Ralf pits.
Good stop for the Toyota. Yeah, you do sense that Michael's got plenty of speed in his pocket as well. And his lead up to 16.8 seconds over Massa, who's a further 10 seconds ahead of Alonso now. Ralf slots back in front of Fisichella, so that's P6 then. He slots back in P6, behind Räikkönen and ahead of De La Rosa.
But he doesn't have to stop again. That's what's interesting about the situation of Ralf Schumacher. All of the front runners have to stop again. and so we'll see where that puts Ralf Schumacher at the end of this Grand Prix. He's racing Raikkonen, Fisichella. De La Rosa lost too much time, really, in the early part of the Grand Prix after a bad start. Got him held up behind Mark Webber. He's now trying to reclaim something from his weekend. And the pace he's going at the moment, if he hadn't had that poor start, you'd have to say that De La Rosa would probably be up in 6th place and hassling his teammate Raikkonen, because he's faster than him at the moment, this phase of the Grand Prix. So it's a case of what might have been for Pedro De La Rosa, and very much a case of what is and what will be for Michael Schumacher, who's bidding to become the first man in history to win the same Grand Prix on 8 occasions. He's won quite a few races 7 times, but no one's ever done 8. And you can add that to his list of other incredible historical achievements.
Ninth place man David Coulthard next in line to be lapped by Michael Schumacher, who's very quickly turning into the class of the field this afternoon. And Coulthard's still in a good battle with Heidfeld over that final World Championship point. They're 8th and 9th at the moment. Scott Speed was hanging on to the pair of them, but he was the Toro Rosso we saw scrambling through the gravel, and has fallen 14 seconds behind Coulthard now, although he's lapping slightly faster.
Well, it's not been without its dramas for Ferrari this weekend. Going into qualifying yesterday, Felipe Massa, we were just looking at there, had a problem with his clutch, and the mechanics had to work very, very quickly to sort that one out so Felipe could go out and stick the car in the front row of the grid. And Michael Schumacher, in free practice, had a fire in the engine bay halfway through the Saturday morning practice session, leaving his mechanics about 2.5 hours to sort it all out. And the whole rear of the car was completely covered in foam, so it all had to be cleaned out, make sure none of the electrics have been affected. And Ferrari mechanics, I think, will pour themselves a very large drink at the end of this weekend, because that puts them under huge pressure, that kind of thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, they did well to get both those cars out for qualifying. Raikkonen's come alive. He's now started to catch Alonso again, just 5.8 seconds behind. It's yo-yoing all over the place.
So Schumacher on lap 49, now 18 seconds clear of Massa, as we look at a super slow-mo of Fernando Alonso attacking the curbs. Alonso now half a minute behind the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher, and that is a considerable margin, and not at all what Pat Simmons and his team had in mind going into this race. Raikkonen's just under 6 seconds behind him, catching him slowly, very slowly, it has to be said. Ralf Schumacher is in 5th. He's a danger man as far as Alonso is concerned. If he picks the pace up, then Alonso might come under pressure from Ralf Schumacher. Fisichella having a quiet afternoon down in 6th place, a full 25 seconds behind his teammate. That's an eternity in the same car. And he's been struggling with rear tyre wear. And De La Rosa is 7th as we ride on board with Kimi Raikkonen, attacking the start-finish line then, building up to about 185 miles an hour in front of this very large crowd here, into the Grand Cours, 170 miles an hour here, then into this long right-hander, 3.5 G of lateral force, pushing his neck and his head over to the left at about 140 miles an hour, picking up the speed down the back straight, peaking out at about 195 miles an hour, and then he'll stamp on the brake pedal. Now, 2.5 seconds of braking takes him from 195 down to 35 miles an hour. 4G acting on his head and his chest, pushing him forwards into his seatbelts and through into the fast chicane. Hold your breath. 140 miles an hour through there, into the 180 corner now, down to 55 miles an hour. Raikkonen on the attack here in 4th place.
Yeah, so 1:17.9 was the previous lap for Raikkonen, 1:17.5 for Michael Schumacher in the lead. Alonso's buried in the mid-118s, and that's just how hard Raikkonen trying to hang on to that McLaren. He suddenly sniffs a podium here this afternoon.
Towards the latter part of the lap now, coming down towards the final corner, the Lycée Pin, as it's called, modified a couple of years ago to try and provide another overtaking opportunity. Haven't seen too many passing through there this weekend, and a very slow final chicane and starting another lap. Look at the rev counter. In qualifying yesterday, the Mercedes-Benz engine, for the first time, broke through the 20,000 RPM barrier, which is quite a milestone for a V8 engine. And Norbert Haug, the boss of Mercedes, was so happy about that.
Still going today. Both McLaren Mercedes-Benz out there. Raikkonen 4th at the moment. De La Rosa has pitted for his 3rd and scheduled final scheduled stop of the afternoon. Instead of, again, lightly scrubbed tyres that have probably done a qualifying run. De La Rosa weighing a 7.6 second stop. Solid, and that'll keep him comfortably in 7th place. Ted.
It's a worse problem than we thought at Williams. They come out for Mark Webber again because it's just unsafe. They're going to have a look at the tyre pressures to see if he can carry on. But Nico Rosberg had exactly the same problem, Martin. And I've just spoken to Bridgestone and Williams, and they say the tyre is overheating and delaminating on both cars. It's the left rear, so serious problems. And I don't know how much further either car can go on, really.
Well, we were talking about the reasons why Magny Cours is such a difficult track on tyres, and one of the reasons that the left-hand side of the car gets a hammering is because of that long right-hander we were just riding through with Kimi Räikkönen, called the Estoril corner. 3.5 G of lateral load on the left-hand side of the car at over 140 miles an hour, and having to do that 70 times over the course of the season puts a lot of strain on the car. And a stint for these guys is around about 20 laps, so even over 20 laps it's damaging the tyres. Crucially for De La Rosa though, Martin, he came out in front of David Coulthard in 8th place, so De La Rosa 7th, he retains that 7th place. Coulthard in 8th, who we believe isn't going to have to stop again this afternoon.
Yes. Williams, of course, on the same, fundamentally the same tyres as the leaders Ferrari and Toyota. They're in 5th place with Ralf Schumacher. So I'm sure they haven't got as much downforce as the front-running teams, otherwise they'd be up there with them. So it can't be that they're putting too much load into the tyre. It must be sliding around and extra wheel spin, maybe traction control issues or whatever, but that can only be what's generating extra heat in a Williams Bridgestone as compared to a Ferrari Bridgestone.
Absolutely right. Rear tyres spinning up is a big problem here as they try and find some grip from this billiard table smooth, low grip surface here in Magny Cours. Michael Schumacher then 21 seconds now in front of teammate Felipe Massa. It was a Ferrari 1-2 a fortnight ago in Indianapolis. And it would be an absolute dream for them to get a second one in a row, and would put considerable pressure then on Fernando Alonso. Take the points margin down to 15 with 7 Grand Prix still to go. And from there, you'd have to say it really is anyone's game. So Alonso 3rd, half a minute behind the race leader. Räikkönen slowly catching Alonso. On that last lap, he took 0.8 of a second out of him. He's now just 3 seconds behind him. They both have to stop again. And some disquiet, I think, probably on the Renault timing stand. Ralf Schumacher, he doesn't have to stop again here this afternoon. He is only 17 seconds behind Räikkönen, and if he can maintain that pace, or even go slightly faster, he might be able to challenge those two when they come out of their pit stops.
Coulthard pits, and it's important. He's got to get out somewhere near Heidfeld. I think he'll be behind him. Massa pits too, but Villeneuve and co are just behind Heidfeld. So Coulthard still with a chance of a World Championship point, but it looks like he may have to rely on some unreliability to steal it and pick it up. Massa exits then, and Alonso now up into P2. Räikkönen in 2. It's all happening down there. Liuzzi 2 for Toro Rosso.
Yeah, Räikkönen had to pit now because Ralf Schumacher was becoming a danger for him. He should be able to rejoin in front of the Toyota, who crosses the start-finish line now, so it'll be quite close between those two. We're looking at second place man now, Fernando Alonso. Now that, he's probably, sorry, I beg your pardon, he's, yes, second place man Alonso. Massa is behind him on the racetrack, but of course Alonso has to stop again. But what happened with Räikkönen and Ralf Schumacher? Who's in front out of those two?
17 laps to go. Alonso put 9.6 seconds worth of gas in. We don't know exactly how much he had when he pitted. You've got to assume it was virtually empty. So how far will that get him? He might need a splash and dash at the end. That won't be enough to beat Massa. But I find it difficult to believe that'll get him to the end of the race.
Well, didn't he have a slow stop? Wasn't there a problem with the rear jack?
No, I think he just had a lot of fuel.
No, maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. It could be interesting from Alonso's point of view. We will find out. And Räikkönen, the computer still hasn't updated itself to tell us what the story is between Räikkönen and Ralf Schumacher in that scrap for 4th place. As Michael Schumacher goes through 1:17.6, a relentless pace from Schumacher at the front. Absolutely wonderful performance on a circuit he loves. 7 times before a winner here.
wonder what's going through Alonso's head. He's falling away now behind the Ferraris this season. He's significantly ahead of the McLarens where he's moving to next year. He's not been driving quite as nicely as he has in the last season and a half. So Alonso will be a bit of reflecting, I think, when he leaves this Grand Prix. Ted has further news.
Yeah, it just didn't work out for McLaren. Kimi Raikkonen still behind Ralf Schumacher by just less than a second as Michael Schumacher comes in and puts on another set of tyres. He seems to be working good stop. It's just everything's going Ferrari's way today. It just seems like the old days, doesn't it? But not so good at McLaren for Raikkonen.
Got a set of stickers left as well. A set of brand new tyres left for the final stint as Michael Schumacher.
Yep, so we were asking the question, what happened with Raikkonen? He did rejoin behind Ralf Schumacher. So Ralf Schumacher up into 4th place, Kimi Raikkonen down to 5th, 6th Giancarlo Fisichella, and 7th Pedro de la Rosa. So half a good day anyway for Toyota. Jarno Trulli, who was in front of Ralf Schumacher, has retired from this Grand Prix. And his teammate, though, is still going strongly, looking for another points finish for the Toyota team.
Well, that's the best scrap to watch now as Michael Schumacher snatches a break down into the 180 corner. Is Raikkonen immediately starting to catch Ralf Schumacher. Just 1.2 seconds between them as they crossed the line last time around. It's lap 56. Michael Schumacher leads by 34 seconds just before that stop.
G loadings on the drivers. You can see heavy. The yellow tells you which the lateral G are. The vertical G is red and green, the throttle and the brake. A little bit of brake then going into the fast chicane, and then a lot of brake going into Chateau d'Eau. About 50% brake pressure. As Kimi Raikkonen chases down Ralf Schumacher for 4th place. Just looking there at Franck Montagny, making his last appearance for the Super Aguri team, the only French driver in the field. He's been driving this car in races since Barcelona, where he replaced Yuji Ide, who was considered not good enough for Formula One and sent packing back to Japan. But with the Japanese sponsors that they have this year with that team, they need a Japanese driver in the car. And so Yamamoto, who's been the 3rd driver understudying Montagny in the last few Grand Prix, he'll step up to the race seat. Montagny will go back to being the 3rd driver, and who knows whether we'll see him again behind the wheel in races. Certainly Aguri Suzuki said he'd like to create an opening for him because he'd been very impressed with the way Montagny has driven. The other Super Aguri no longer in the Grand Prix. Takuma Sato retired early on, and we're back on board with Raikkonen.
Yeah, his front tyres look horrible as well. He just lost 0.8 of a second to Ralf Schumacher. You can see down the road in the Toyota, and I think he's going through a bit of a graining phase on the front of that McLaren. Just means you have to get out of the throttle more and more and more to allow the front to pick up grip. It just seems forever before you can replant the throttle.
Into Lycée Pin for the 57th time for Kimi Raikkonen. Just looking at these extraordinary aerodynamic devices on the front of the BMW of Nick Heidfeld. But they're getting him into the points, so whatever they may look like, they certainly seem to be doing a job for him. Started 11th, now running in 8th place, and just losing a little bit of time there as he puts a lap on the Super Aguri of Montagny, who's 3 laps down, as Nico Rosberg pits. Just 12 laps to go in the French Grand Prix here in Magny Cours in the centre of France. We're about an hour and a half north of Clermont-Ferrand, which is the industrial base of the Michelin tyre company. This is a racetrack that no one tyre company or team has dominated in the last few years. We've had Williams, Michelin, Ferrari, Bridgestone, Renault, Michelin winning in the last few years, but there's no question about who the dominant package is this afternoon, and that is the Ferrari Bridgestone Michael Schumacher combination. There is the timing wall of Ferrari. They are absolutely delighted at the way this race has unfolded. Michael Schumacher is leading. Alonso is second for Renault, but we're not sure whether he has to stop again this afternoon. If he does, he'll fall behind Felipe Massa, and we'll have a Ferrari 1-2. If he does not have to stop again, then he will possibly be able to hold on to that second place. Fourth at the moment is Ralf Schumacher. Fifth, and closing in on him, is Kimi Raikkonen in the McLaren, but we've seen some signs of quite a lot of front tyre wear for that McLaren, so Raikkonen having to work quite hard to get that car to go quickly. Fisichella, a disappointing afternoon down in sixth in the Renault, and Pedro de la Rosa, who replaces Juan Pablo Montoya, who's turned his back on Formula One and gone off to race NASCAR in America. De la Rosa seventh, and Nick Heidfeld the final points position. It's been a fairly straightforward story here this afternoon. Ferrari leading away from the start. Felipe Massa playing a great team role, holding Alonso behind him in the opening phase that allowed Schumacher to make the break. And then after that, the story was that the Renault just simply wasn't fast enough to live with the Ferraris. Having lost all that time, Alonso couldn't turn to anywhere to get performance. They stayed ahead at the first stops and the second round of stops. Both Ferraris using a three-stop strategy here this afternoon. A few key retirements. Jarno Trulli retired from fourth earlier, around about half distance. Kimi Raikkonen got himself into fourth place, but the tactics of Toyota seem superior today. They're running the Bridgestone tyre as well, and they've got Ralf Schumacher in front of Kimi Raikkonen, and that's really the principal battle on the racetrack at the moment. Ted Kravitz, what do you got for us?
Yeah, updating that Williams story. James, you would have seen Mark Webber hopping out the car. The car was too badly damaged. He wasn't happy with the handling of it, and the team, to be honest, still aren't sure whether it's something on the bodywork that's cutting the tyre, whether it's the tyre that's overheating, although that tyre that he just came in with, that he's done 7, 8, 9 laps with, was fine, but they've just decided that it's too much of a risk, and he wasn't in the points anyway, so they've retired Mark Webber.
Yeah, that's one unhappy bunny hopping out of that Williams, and unusually for Mark, he's beginning to let some of that frustration out, isn't he, during conversations or television interviews or whatever. It is not going the way he expected at all. So let's have a look at the scraps that are going on. Ralf Schumacher and Kimi Raikkonen 4 and 5. They're just 2 seconds apart. De La Rosa steaming along, but he hasn't got enough time to catch sixth place man Fisichella. Coulthard's catching Heidfeld in for 8th place, but again he's going to be a bit short of time. We haven't mentioned Button is in this race. Jenson Button is in this Grand Prix. We've politely ignored him after his awful qualifying situation yesterday, but he's up to P11 and he's been lapping sort of 118s, early 119s, which is not too bad a pace actually. With a better start, he might have been somewhere in there with some points.
Yeah, points possible. I think he would have probably been 7th or 8th maybe if he'd had a normal grid slot, but he's lapping at the same speed as Scott's speed in the Toro Rosso. So if you're wondering what Jenson Button's up to, he's mixing it with Toro Rossos and Jacques Villeneuve in the BMW Sauber. That's not at all what Jenson Button had in mind. As always at this time of year in Formula One, you've got the people who are relatively happy with the way things are going and people who are distinctly unhappy with how things are. Poor old Jenson Button, well, he's in it for the long haul at Honda, and if you talk to him about it, he'll say, yes, well, you know, we've got Nakamoto now as our technical director. I believe in him. I believe he'll take us in the right direction. We will get there, just we won't get there quickly. Obviously, Mark Webber is spitting feathers with frustration down at Williams, who have only one car in the field here now. Nico Rosberg down in 15th place. For a team like Williams that used to dominate Formula One through the 1990s, to have one car in 15th is not at all what they wanted. Toyota seem to be coming good at the moment. Ferrari are definitely coming good at the moment. McLaren are nibbling, but they've never really got a show, apart from Monaco, where the car was very competitive in high downforce setup. They struggle on these medium speed tracks like Magny Cours, so they're more or less where they started the season really. Honda have gone backwards a little bit. Red Bull are just outside the points with Coulthard at the moment, hoping for good things to come in the second half of the championship. And BMW Sauber have been moving, creeping forwards. Some pretty consistent points finishes recently. I think the team on the move at the moment is Toro Rosso, for whom Scott Speed is now in 10th place. If you bear in mind, This is last year's Minardi team. You can see what a step forward they've made since the Red Bull company took them over.
Well, the Renault fans not getting quite what they wanted or expected. Alonso has been on pole there for 04 and 05. Didn't make it this year, made a slight error on the first part of his lap yesterday. The winner last year. And I think he'll be surprised that he's some 18 seconds off the lead at the moment, and possibly, just possibly, also has to make a late splash and dash to get some fuel to get him to the end of the Grand Prix, which will release Massa back into second place. Ralf Schumacher is just 19 seconds behind them, so even if he does have to pit, he should be comfortably out in front. And who's that? That's the Honda of Button.
Looks like it might be a double Honda retirement here, a very, very slow-moving Honda.
Gearbox problems.
Yep, that's it for Jenson Button. So it looks like looks like 2 Honda retirements this afternoon. And a dismal weekend for Honda comes to an end. Well, Mark Webber, I imagine Louise Goodman needs to be tied down to something because he must be jumping around with anger.
Well, let's just ask him. He looks quite calm. James is just wondering, are you jumping around with anger?
Well, of course, I'm massively disappointed. We could have got maybe a point or something. I was trying very hard to stay in there with the quicker guys, but it looks like we've got some inside shoulder heat issues for some reason. So I had, obviously, we don't know if it's tyre, wheel, whatever, the failure into the quick chicane, which then, of course, trashed a lot of the aerodynamics. We went back out again. But the day was wasted, so we might as well save the engine for on.
Frustration is the word, not just for your race today, but at this rate, your season, isn't it?
Yeah, we're making it very hard work for ourselves. So I'm doing the best I can, you know. The guys are burying themselves here. The Meckies, everyone at the factory, I mean, they're doing their stuff, but we have nothing to show for it at the moment.
Thanks, Mark.
Great team player, Mark Webber, but certainly publicly he's standing behind everybody, and I'm sure in private as well, but it's just not really what he had in mind. If you bear in mind, he could have been a Renault driver. He took the decision to go to Williams at the time they were with BMW, and that was his choice. He has to stick with it. It was his decision. But you only get one career in Formula One, don't you, Martin?
You do, I'm afraid. It's hard to get to Formula One as a driver, and it's even harder to stay there, in my experience. And yep, there's always some fresh blood coming along, and teams with... and Ted has some news on whether Alonso may have to pit again.
No, he doesn't. I've been into Renault, Martin, and they're entirely frank, which is refreshing for a Formula One team. Good on them. Well done, Renault, for being frank about it. But they're saying he does not need to stop again. So he's managed a very long time on this second stint, though. So obviously working their Michelin tyres very well. He is suffering from a bit of oversteer, though, which could help him. But he's managing the gap to Massa behind him.
Well, that's good for them, isn't it? He's 0.4 of a second a lap faster than Felipe Massa. There is Massa in third place. So you'd have to say that although on the day the package of Renault was not a match for the package of Ferrari, the brain of Pat Simmons was superior, possibly as far as the battle between Massa and Alonso is concerned anyway, to that of Ross Brawn, and they've managed to keep Alonso in front of Massa. You certainly wouldn't have put too much money on that 25 laps ago, would you?
No, but it was a very long stop. It seemed quite long enough to me to go that far into the Grand Prix, but it's smart thinking and obvious thinking, if you like. They knew they'd lost the race to Michael Schumacher, but if they steal second place and minimise the damage to just 2 points, because other people have fallen away that could damage Alonso, in terms of Jarno Trulli particularly, Kimi Räikkönen struggling a bit on pace as well. So that's released the pressure from behind Alonso, and they've catapulted him back in front of Massa. So good work from Renault. I just hope he doesn't have to creep in the pits at the end, because that'll be got to be short of fuel right near the end of the race.
Yeah, it's going to be tight, that's for sure. But it's going to be crucial from their point of view as well, because Michael Schumacher on course here for 10 World Championship points, and as things stood before, it looked like Massa was going to take 8 and Alonso just 6, so Michael was going to take 4 points out of Alonso's lead. They've managed to reduce the damage here, and it's simply 2 points that Schumacher will take away, so it'll go to 17 points with 7 races still to go. So a very important save by the Renault team if Alonso can bring it home. And you have to say their reliability has been stunning so far this year. They've achieved 95% reliability in Grand Prix. That's compared to 65% last year. It's one of the key areas where Renault have made an improvement on what was already a pretty good year last year.
And in the low 118s now, quite enjoying this. But looks like catching Schumacher a second a lap, who's backed off anyway because he's got the race in his pocket, and but it fends off any rearguard action from Felipe Massa in third place. Ralf Schumacher looking comfortable in fourth. He can hold Kimi Raikkonen a solid 2 seconds behind him, it seems, at any time in these final stages. Fisichella 50 seconds off the lead, back in sixth. De La Rosa catching Fisichella quite quickly as well, but not enough laps to do the damage, I think.
No, I don't think there are. So De La Rosa's race very much compromised by a poor start, getting stuck behind Mark Webber in the early phases. And but for that, I think he would have been certainly in front of Fisichella and possibly troubling Raikkonen here this afternoon, because he was certainly as quick as him for certain key parts of the race, and it would have certainly given Raikkonen a bit of help in the battle with Ralf Schumacher. So not a bad debut for Pedro de la Rosa, a decent qualifying, 0.4 of a second off teammate Raikkonen in qualifying, and he stopped a lap later than Raikkonen, so that was a representative lap time in qualifying for De La Rosa. I'm sure he'll get another chance at Hockenheim in a couple of weeks' time, and who knows who might be in the seat for the remaining races. Well, it's been a miserable weekend for the Honda team. Rubens Barrichello retiring earlier on, and now Jenson Button's out, and he's talking to Louise.
And like his teammate, I understand it was an engine problem for you as well, gents.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem was. I don't know if it was the same as what's my teammate's name, Rubens. But it's really frustrating because, you know, the first stint we were really struggling with understeer. I was massively, I was grading the fronts, but I had big understeer in turn 2. I had no chance to overtake, even though I had lighter fuel. But the second and third stints, you know, for the car we have, worked very well, and we were able to overtake the people we're racing with, Rosberg, Klein, Villeneuve. So, you know, it was good for where we are at the moment. We still weren't in a, you know, at that point in time in a position to score points, but you know, anything can happen. It really can. And I was catching up to speed, and it was going well. So it's frustrating, and you know, hopefully we can solve the problem.
I should think you'd be glad to get out of here, won't you?
Yeah, you could say that of a few races though. So, you know, the good thing is that we actually went better in the race than what we did in qualifying. I know that's, you know, it can't get much worse starting 19th, but we're up to 11th and we're catching up with 10th. Not many people fell out of the race, so you know, the car was feeling reasonable, and we don't have the pace of other people, but the balance is there. It's just a lack of overall speed, and that comes from engine power, and that comes from downforce, and that's what we are lacking in at the moment. So it's disappointing, and also we're lacking in reliability. So we haven't got one or the other at the moment, but you know, I'm sure that will change soon. It has to.
Cheers, mate.
Well, it's a carbon copy of the World Cup, really, isn't it? Italy versus France for the big glory. Italy winning ahead of France, and England an early bath.
Right, so yes, 6 cars retired. 2 of them are the Hondas of Button, and I believe his name's Rubens. But Webber with the left rear tyre problem. If you're overheating the inside shoulder, maybe also camber can come into that, or camber change in the suspension geometry. Jarno Trulli, we don't really know what happened to him, but he pulled straight into the garage, didn't he? And Barrichello looked like he did have an engine problem out on the track. I'm surprised Jens said it's engine, because there was a remarkably little smoke around with the engine, but it couldn't be some of the control systems or fuel pressure or whatever that brought him into the pits. Montero lost the hydraulic pressure. Diff failed to lock up and sent him skywards off a curb into a fast chicane. Sato pulling out very early in the Grand Prix.
Well, just 1 lap to go then on a track which has brought so much historic achievement for Michael Schumacher in the past. It was here a few years ago where he equalled the great Juan Manuel Fangio to become a 5-time Formula 1 world champion. He's gone a bit beyond that now, hasn't he? 2 more world championships, and is he going to add an 8th here in 2006? A season which started out looking like a Renault cakewalk, but they've turned it around, Ferrari and Bridgestone. And as we go into the second part of this season, they are looking like the stronger package. In Hockenheim in 2 weeks' time, we'll see the response from Renault. They've got a new aerodynamic and engine package worth between 3 and 4/10 of a second, they hope, which should, they hope, get the advantage back to them. But Ferrari aren't going to lie down, and Schumacher is clearly up for the fight. No thoughts of retirement for him. He wants to race on. This is giving him exactly what he wanted, and this is going to give him a record 8th French Grand Prix victory. Waving to the crowd. It's been that kind of afternoon, really. A one hand on the steering wheel afternoon for certainly the second half of the Grand Prix, because that is how dominant he has been. And for the second race in a row, Michael Schumacher coming through to claim victory. It's his 4th of the season. Michael Schumacher wins his 8th victory in the French Grand Prix, and his 88th career win. Would you believe it, Martin? He is now only 4 wins short of the combined total of Senna and Prost, the other two great drivers that stand comparison with him.
Amazing statistics, 187 victories for Ferrari, 2. Massa, 3rd place. Really, they were outsmarted by Renault on that one, and Alonso made the best of a bad situation to minimise the points hurt to just 2. And get up there in 2nd place on the podium. I think it's the 10th consecutive double point scoring for Renault here this afternoon. So Fisichella way down in 6th place, but still coming in the points. De La Rosa will take 7. Heidfeld nicks just the extra and final point for 8th place, 3 seconds ahead of Coulthard.
Frustrating for David Coulthard, who started in front of Nick Heidfeld, but crucially for Alonso, he was able to get in front of Felipe Massa and minimise the damage and the points lost. Podium in a moment. Looking down at the rest of the finishers then outside of the points. David Coulthard finished in 9th place, 3.5 seconds behind Nick Heidfeld. Scott Speed, another top 10 finish for him. There's Aldo Costa, the tall man in the red suit, rubbing his forehead there. He's the designer of this year's Ferrari car. He also designed last year's car, which wasn't quite so good, but he seems to have got it right this year, and his presence here this weekend just reflects how much work has gone on behind the scenes to bring this updated Ferrari package to the French Grand Prix. He doesn't normally appear at races, but obviously a lot of new bits on the car. Villeneuve also finishing outside the points after being very much compromised yesterday in qualifying. And all the rest of the finishers down to 16th place. Christian Klien finishes where he started in 12th. Liuzzi well up on where he started. He was 22nd on the grid. Rosberg on a difficult day for Williams. Cut tyres for Mark Webber, and some indication that Rosberg was suffering from a similar problem. Managed to nurse it home in 14th. And then the MF1 of Albers, the sole remaining MF1. A delighted Michael Schumacher, a measured response, I think, in the garage. They're pleased to have won, but they're disappointed not to have got a 1-2, I think. That's the crucial statistic, though. 17 points now, the difference between Alonso and Schumacher. If Massa had been in front of Alonso, it would have been 15.
Yeah, that's a major save for Alonso, isn't it? Because there really was a stage earlier on in the race where you could see Alonso finishing 4th or 5th again, a little bit like back in America 2 weeks ago. So he's going to be, having said through the race that he's going to go away from here having to reflect, actually, that's a major save.
Ralf Schumacher moves up to 9th in the driver's standings with 4th place here this afternoon. He was 11th before this Grand Prix, so it's been a good day for Ralf Schumacher. Great day, in fact, for the Schumacher family. Welcome back to a baking hot Magny Cours in central France, where Michael Schumacher has won the French Grand Prix for the 8th time, the only man ever to win the same event 8 times. It's another little piece of history for him on a track that's been rich in history. He absolutely ecstatic about it, but Ferrari, I think, will be slightly disappointed that Felipe Massa wasn't able to finish in front of Fernando Alonso, who sportingly gave Schumacher a handshake. They win together and they lose together, the Ferrari team, and that doesn't look to me like a man who's thinking about leaving Ferrari in Formula One, does it you?
Just what I was thinking as you were saying that. That doesn't look like a man about to retire at the end of the season. And he must fancy, with everybody having to go to Bridgestone tyres next year with Michelin's pull-out, he must fancy having a head start with a Ferrari that knows very well how to design a car and make the best of Bridgestone tyres. And well, you've really got to wonder, he might just snatch this year's World Championship as well, the way he's going at the moment. He only needs one big slip-up from Alonso, and Michael will be right back in the hunt.
I think that's absolutely right. They've come here this weekend with an updated package. It's certainly made a big difference. This has been a good weekend also for the Bridgestone tyre company, with Ralf Schumacher finishing in 4th place. And you have to say, Renault have made the most of their package with the Michelin, but it's not been enough here today. And although there's De La Rosa, who's stopped out on the racetrack with some kind of problem, he finished in 7th place, picked up 2 championship points, standing in for Juan Montoya, who's quit Formula One. A big, big hug. It just shows you how much it means to Michael Schumacher and Jean Todt. Italy dominant again then.
You can see why Renault are having a massive launch at getting Kimi Raikkonen if he is in the marketplace. That's if he's leaving McLaren, it's if he's not bolted into a Ferrari contract that he can't get out of. But Alonso some 35 seconds ahead of Fisichella at the end of the race, and Fisichella's going well at the moment. I think it just shows you how well Alonso actually performed on a difficult day.
Yes, bouncing back from Indianapolis 2 weeks ago, where he was outperformed by Fisichella really for the first time in equal circumstances. The 2 occasions when Fisichella has won and beaten Alonso, on both of those occasions Alonso's qualifying has been very much compromised. But in Indianapolis there was a straight fight between them, and Fisichella the stronger man, so Alonso's definitely shaded his teammate here this weekend. And the Italian flags fly once again. It is starting to feel a little bit like the good old days, isn't it, as far as Ferrari are concerned? It's the way that they dominated things in 2002 and 2004. We go to Hockenheim next in 2 weeks' time, a track which has worked well for Bridgestone and for Michelin in the past. Again, not too much to choose between them. And it'll be very, very interesting to see who comes out on top in that one. Alonso, I think, will be sleeping a little bit less well tonight.
Yeah, but as I said, halfway through the race, it looked pretty dismal for him, whether he could have come in 4th or 5th. So, in a way, I think he'll feel that that's a great save to come in 2nd place. But my driver of the day, though, easily Michael Schumacher, pole position, lights to flag victory, only headed during pit stops. And you have to say, he also looked like he had plenty spare if he needed it as well.
Well, it's 17 points, the gap between them in the Drivers' Championship. If you look at the first 3 races of this season, Alonso took 28 points to Schumacher's 11. Schumacher had engine problems in Malaysia and then tyre problems in Australia. And those 2 Grand Prix were enough to cost him all those points. And since then, it's been even Stevens. And if anything like that happened to Alonso then, those 2 races, those 2 poor races that Michael had, they would be absolutely level. And that just shows you anything can happen in Formula One, and it's by no means a foregone conclusion that Alonso is going to be able to nurse this points lead to the finish. Here's your race winner. The 150th time he stepped on a Formula One podium. dramatic scenes here at Magny Cours. A heavily revised Ferrari car has come here and has dominated this weekend.
Home advantage then for Michael Schumacher 2 weeks from now at Hockenheim, where he's also always gone extremely well too. There'll be a lot of support for him, and with the car that he's got at the moment, the new Renault package is going to have to work extremely well.
And importantly, it shows that Indianapolis 2 weeks ago was not a flash in the pan. Ferrari are very definitely back in business. These guys, what a party they've had this week. Big hangover on Monday morning after Italy won the World Cup. Alonso seems happy enough with second place, and well, he might, saving a couple of points of his precious lead in the championship. And third podium of the year for Felipe Massa, who gets better and better as the season progresses. Well, as always in Formula One, it's a season with twists and turns, and this last two Grand Prix has given us pause for thought, I think. A month ago, we were wondering whether anybody was going to catch Fernando Alonso. Now we're wondering if Michael Schumacher might just nick this World Championship from underneath his nose. We'll see Renault's response in 2 weeks' time in Hockenheim.
Vainqueur devant Fernando Alonso et la Scuderia Ferrari avec Felipe Massa troisième. Voilà, et Fernando Alonso qui, comme l'ensemble de ses pilotes, du moins Michael Schumacher, Felipe Massa premier, troisième, va maintenant prendre la direction de la salle de presse pour la traditionnelle conférence d'arrivée, probablement pour revenir sur le détail du classement de ce Grand Prix de France de Formule 1. Le Grand Prix du centenaire, avec une deuxième victoire consécutive pour Michael Schumacher, quatrième de l'année. Les deux victoires consécutives, deux fois premier en fait pour Michael Schumacher. Il s'agissait de la victoire à Saint-Marin, de la victoire du Grand Prix d'Europe, puis des États-Unis. Et là, à l'instant, c'est tout frais du Grand Prix de France. Michael Schumacher qui a donc devancé à l'arrivée Fernando Alonso, et un podium complété par la troisième place de Felipe